You'll remember in March of 2011, there was a nuclear power plant accident in Fukushima, Japan, that was associated with the devastating tsunami that hit that island. And now here we are 12 years later, and it's been announced that radiated water that was used to cool down the core of that plant is now going to be released into the Pacific Ocean. Radioactive water released to the Pacific Ocean in Japan. Insert your Godzilla joke here. This literally feels like the storyline. So is this safe? And people are protesting in Japan. Do they have a right to protest? Do they have a right to be concerned about their food supply? Let's face it, Japan is an island nation and they're known for eating quite a bit of fish. Will this actually be poisonous for them, as the demonstrators in the streets are saying? Usually those demonstrators in the streets aren't accurate. Let's bring in Jack Spencer, Senior Research Fellow for Energy Policy at Heritage Foundation. You know a thing or two about this nuclear stuff, Jack, so thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
First of all, this isn't exactly the storyline of Godzilla. In fact, I think Godzilla was created after nuclear bomb testing. Is that right?
I'm not a Godzilla expert, I have to admit.
I asked for a Godzilla expert. Well,
I can play one.
Well, you are nuclear. So first of all, where did this water come from? Is this pretty normal for the operations of a nuclear power plant to have water coming in? And then what happened was, because of this accident, the water was then part of the contamination process. Talk us through this.
Yeah, well, producing water with tritium in it is a normal process. Having this amount of it is more abnormal. But the process they're going through, look, I'm the first to admit it's not a good look. Like, you never want your headline to be, we're releasing a bunch of radiated water into the ocean. But the fact of the matter is, the tritium is naturally occurring. The water you drank this morning has tritium in it. It's all around us. Mm-hmm. Radiation is all around us. The bigger story here is, I think, it's an ongoing lack of understanding around nuclear energy and what the threats are. And like I said, it's not a good look, but it's also not a public health or safety hazard.
Why is it oftentimes, at least in the Western world, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, more often than not, these nuclear plants are often near a very large body of water here? Obviously, right off the Pacific Ocean. I know that they're in California. Most of those nuclear plants seem to be right on the Pacific coast. 3 Mile Island, of course, is right on, it's an island, it's right in the water. Why is that? Is the water part of the cooling process for the core?
Yeah, it's a really important part of the cooling process. That's how the core, the core gets very hot and you have a continuous looping of water, not through the core. Well, the water that cools down what heats up doesn't come into contact with the radioactive water. So you're always sucking in clean water. That's you're using that to cool down the reactor, and it gets dissipated out. That's not radioactive. That's not really what we're talking about here. But that's why nuclear power plants generally, not exclusively, but generally are near large bodies of water, because they require so much of it to cool the reactors, to operate the reactors.
All right. And the amount of radiation here in this water that's being released, you're telling me it's negligible? I mean, but is that because it's been dissipated for so long?
Yeah. Well, it's because they've put it through an enormous amount of processes to take out all of the dangerous stuff, and then they're diluting it even further. So there are international standards both for the sorts of water that gets that gets released like this, but also for drinking water. In both cases, what Japan is doing is falling well below, or what Japan is doing is far cleaner than what the standards dictate. Okay. So by all accounts, and they're being transparent. And look, I get it. There have been lots of things that have happened in recent years that make us sort of distrustful of institutions sometimes. But I think what we're seeing here is transparency from Japan. This is a process that's well known. It's an element that's well understood. And though I get that the headline is scary, the truth is, if this stuff was dangerous, we would have, as a society, felt the effects of it well before now.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. I would say that there are far greater environmental issues to be concerned about, far greater economic issues. What this allows Japan to do is finally finish the cleanup, the decommissioning of these reactors and move forward.
Well, and it seems ironically, Jack, that the distrust of the government with regard to this kind of operation, it stems from what happened at Chernobyl. But that was a government that deserved to be mistrusted. I mean, that was more a government disaster of incompetence and bureaucracy than it was a nuclear disaster, right?
It was specifically a government disaster, specifically a communist government disaster. What you had there was a situation that, first of all, the Chernobyl reactor is a totally different type of reactor, completely different beast altogether.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Soviet military taking over operations of it, running tests that they didn't understand, and not knowing how to respond whenever things started to go awry. Then you had the government lying about what was happening, and sending people in there to fix things without anyone knowing what was going on. That is more a function of closed communist societies than it is of nuclear power. We need to understand that. That said, Japan's not totally off the hook here. Japan could have been more transparent in the early days of Fukushima when that was ongoing, but they are doing much better now. They have been for years, and this is a good example of them really being transparent and showing everyone what's going on, and bringing in lots of scientists, lots of different Japanese institutions, international bodies. This is not something that we need to be overly concerned with.
Is it fair to say, though, that those people who are protesting in the streets right now and complaining that their fish are going to be radiated and it's going to, kill the environment around Japan, they're the same people who will march in the streets about carbon emissions and global warming and climate change? The irony is nuclear energy, the kind of nuclear power that we're getting from, or we used to get from Fukushima before the accident, that actually is if you're really concerned about carbon emissions and global warming, nuclear power is the perfect solution.
Absolutely. It emits no carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. To be clear, if one cares about that,
yes.
I would argue that nuclear power brings a whole bunch of other attributes to the table, and that's why it's worth pursuing. But nonetheless, your point is well taken, that these are professional protesters. They'll protest anything. They're more about anti-nuclear than they are knowing what the particulars are of what they're protesting. They're part of the environmental radical left, and they don't care really about what their stated goals are, which is increasing standards of living for people, making sure the environment's clean, and rather advancing whatever their political agenda of the day is, which this fits into. As we see, anytime that nuclear is mentioned, you get these protesters out on the street.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was kind of looking forward to a conversation about Godzilla and mutated monsters as a result of this.
We can do that.
I mean, do you like the Matthew Broderick version in the 90s? Do you like the black and white originals with the bad dubbing and the...
Here's the problem. I haven't seen any of them. But I will say, based on my personality and my dislike of retakes of movies in general, and my disposition as a conservative, traditional kind of guy, I'm always going to err on the side of the original.
All right. That's fair. Although they weren't American made. So that kind of works counterproductive to your conservative values. But
well, I'm a best product, best price kind of guy.
Look at that. Oh, here we go. America first, Mr. Spencer.
Exactly. And America provides the best products at the best prices if we get the government out of the way and quit over-regulating everything. I'm with you. America first, no doubt.
Thank you, sir. I'll let that be the last word because it's so true. Thank you, Jack Spencer. There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Oh, Godzilla. It's Salem News Channel.